So good news. Um, they finally released this guy. A Palestinian student at Columbia is freed after his arrest at a citizenship interview, according to the Associated Press. On a judge on Wednesday released a Palestinian student at Columbia University who led protests against Israel's war in Gaza and was arrested by immigration officials during an interview about finalizing his U.S. citizenship. Immigration authorities have arrested and detained college students from around the country since the first days of Trump administration, many of whom participated in campus protests over the Israeli-Hamas war, which has killed more than 52,000 Palestinians. Holy crap. That's scary in itself. That's scary in itself. America, land of the free, home of the brave. They're deliberately engaging in deporting people because they're not supporting a ferocious onset slaughter of another civilization. Think of how disgusting that is, diabolical, almost satanic that is. That if you're not supportive of the ethnic cleansing of a full population, we're going to take away your rights. We're going to take away your constitutional rights and values, and we'll just deport you. And now they're going after Americans. So it's not even an immigration case anymore. It's not, oh well, they're foreigners, so they have privilege to have free speech. No, free speech is a right. Not a privilege. It's a constitutional right given by God. At least that's what the founding fathers said. It's a constitutional right given by God on the formation of what America is. You always say that America is this dream. America is this entity. It's a vision. And that means that constitutional rights are given to anybody. Anybody that comes into America gets that exact same right, regardless of what the conversation is. That's what makes America America. And if you can't support that because you support this onset slaughter, this mass wipeout population, then guess what? You're not American. You're not American. You don't support the Constitution. You don't support America first. You're not making America great again. So maybe it's your fault. Maybe you should get deported if you can't support free speech. Mohsen Madawi is among the first of those students to win his freedom after challenging an arrest. He walked out of the Vermont courthouse Wednesday and led hundreds of supporters in chants including "No Fear" and "Free Palestine." He said people must come together to defend both democracy and humanity. Never give up on the idea that justice will prevail, he said. We want to stand up for humanity because the rest of the world, not only Palestine, is watching us. And what is going to happen in America is going to affect the rest of the world. Madawi, 34 years old, has been a legal permanent resident for 10 years. Legal permanent resident. Okay? This is not an illegal migrant. This is not someone who crossed the border just 5 seconds ago. This is someone who went through the checks and balances and became a legal permanent resident. So, you're deporting an American. You're deporting a legal resident of America. Want to remind people. He was in a Vermont state prison since April 14th. In his release order, U.S. District Judge Jeffrey Crawford said Madawi was raised a substantial claim that the government arrested him to stifle speech in which it disagrees. Even if we were a firebrand, his conduct is protected by the First Amendment, the judge wrote, adding that offending political opponents or alarming the State Department doesn't make him dangerous enough to justify detention. The U.S. government argues they can remove Madawi from the country under the Immigration Nationalities Act. That's because Secretary of State Marco Rubio says his presence and activities would have serious adverse foreign policy consequences and would compromise a compelling U.S. foreign policy interest. What does that mean in layman's terms? They want war. We can't have someone that's contradicting war efforts. We can't have someone with a different opinion if we want to go to war. Just like we saw with Palantir, with Alex Karp, this is all to protect a war. This is all to protect Israel, the Zionist project, and the military-industrial complex. This is not protecting America. This is not protecting anything to do with America. A government attorney said Wednesday that Madawi is a national security threat, pointing to a 2015 FBI investigation into allegations that he made threatening comments about Jews at a gun shop. But the judge said the FBI appears to have determined those accusations were fabricated. So they made allegations that this guy was making anti-Semitic rhetoric before the protests to try to stir up the controversy and excuse to deport him. And the FBI had no conclusive evidence to point that. And we know that the FBI has made up allegations before. Look at what January 6th was. That was entirely a manufactured, fabricated stunt done by federal insiders. Madawi will appear remotely before an immigration judge in Louisiana on Thursday, his lawyer said. The U.S. Attorney's Office did not respond to messages seeking comment on whenever it will appeal his release. According to a court filing, Madawi was born in a refugee camp in the Israeli-occupied West Bank and moved to the United States in 2014. He organized campus protests at Columbia until March 2024 and co-founded the school's Palestinian Student Union with Mahmoud Khalil, another Palestinian permanent resident of the U.S. And graduate student who was arrested in March. Khalil has been held for nearly 8 weeks in the Louisiana detention center, missing the birth of his first child. An immigration judge ruled that Khalil can be forced out of the country as a national security risk because of his free speech, because it's upsetting the war profiteers. It's not threatening Americans. It's not threatening, endangering the lives of people within the college campus. It's upsetting the war profiteering. That's why they're doing this. That's why they're doing this. Which is pure fascism. Pure fascism. You have corporate entities aligned with the government to force authoritarian measures like deportation, mass deportation of your own citizens, violating the Constitution to protect war profiteers, to protect Israel, to protect the Zionist cult. That is the definition of fascism. In another high-profile case, Rumesa Öztürk, a Tufts University student from Turkey, was detained in March over what her lawyers say is an apparent retaliation for an op-ed piece she co-wrote in the student newspaper. So she didn't even attend the protest. This woman wrote an op-ed. She wrote something in a school paper. Someone found it and reported her to ICE. How is this any different than Nazi Germany? How is this any different? You're detaining people that are not allying with this heinous cult. And anyone that stands outside the lines by writing an op-ed piece is considered a national security threat that they could be exported out of the country. More than 1,000 college students nationwide have had their visas revoked or either legal status terminated since late March, according to an Associated Press review. The federal government has since announced it will reverse the termination of legal status for international students after many filed court challenges, a government lawyer said Friday. So, but be warned, because people are saying, well, it's only international students. It's only people that are guests in this country. They don't get the constitutional rights. Again, constitutional rights go for everybody. That's the whole point of a right. The other thing is, they're going to do it to them. Eventually, they're going to come after you. Because you just open the floodgates to anybody. They're going after people that were at the protests. people that are protesting against just the college, and anyone that writes an op-ed. You basically open the doors to anybody with a target. Anyone that critiques Israel, anyone that critiques the Trump administration, their heinous policies, anyone that contradicts the efforts of war, which I thought Donald Trump was supposed to end the wars. I thought Donald Trump was supposed to be very much détente when it comes to war. Well, it turns out that wasn't to be. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. They're going to continue on war. They're going to fast track wars for Israel, and it's going to be damaging. They're fast tracking to World War III, and they're deporting college students as the national security threat. Not advancing warfare. Not advancing warfare is a threat, but college students that write op-eds. The judge referred to the Ozark case and others like it in his ruling, saying such arrests are reminiscent about nationwide raids targeting suspected anarchists and communists in 1919 and 1920 and deportations during the McCarthy era of the 1950s. Security is like liberty in many of those crimes committed in its name, he wrote, quoting from the dissent in a 1950 case. Madawi's release allows him to travel outside his home state of Vermont and attend graduation next month in New York. He recently completed coursework at Columbia and planned to begin a master's degree program there this fall. The Ivy League university has faced criticism for some students for agreeing to implement a host of policy changes demanded by the Trump administration after Madawi's release. School spokesperson Millie Wirtz said every person in the country deserves due process regardless of their citizenship status. And that's the other thing about this is with this mass deportation, when Trump and ICE and other people were saying, oh, it's only going after the criminals, just hang it. It's only going after the worst of the worst. So we're doing this for the safety of America. They didn't go through court filings. So they're just grabbing people left, right, and center, accusing them of allegations, supposing that they're terrorist groups, supposing that they committed crimes, or in this case, expressing their free speech, which is not a crime, and don't have any court papers, don't have any criminal records, have no proof to criminalize them, but are sending them to El Salvador. They're sending them to CCOT. So this is just crazy. This is unbelievably crazy. This is fascism unleashed. And because ICE is not taking responsibility into their own hands, the Trump administration is just letting them roam free, and they're just collectively gathering as many people as possible and throwing them into CCOT without any sort of criminal investigation, without a jurisdiction, without a legal process. Which, as they stated there, everyone has a chance to fair process. Everyone. That's another constitutional right. A right. So, this is how crazy this is getting. This article from the Houston Chronicle. Governor Abbott threatens to pull San Marcos funding over anti-Semitic Israel ceasefire solution. So there's this town, San Marcos in Texas, just had a citywide vote to do a ceasefire resolution for Gaza, meaning that the town is not going to pay tax dollars. They're not going to spend their hard-earned money sending it overseas to a foreign country so they could slaughter people. That's what this resolution they did in city council. And now the governor of Texas is stomping down and threatening his own people within his own state, this small city in Texas, because they're not subservient to Israel. Think how crazy in Texas. I thought you're supposed to be the tough cowboys and the Lone Star State. I thought you don't get pushed around by bullies. But yeah, you have Governor Abbott, Greg Abbott, threatening his own people because they're not serving Israel. Think how crazy that is. And here's his Twitter page where he doubles down on this. Look at this. Anti-Israel policies are anti-Texas policies. Sent a letter to the city of San Marcos today condemning its proposed anti-Semitic resolution, openly flaunting Texas state law. Texas will not tolerate anti-Semitism. The problem with that is people within Gaza and the Palestinians are also Semites. So you're actually helping anti-Semitism by trying to stop anti-Semitism. Think of that. Think of that. Think how contradicting that is. You're clamping down on a town within your state, having the freedom to decide that their tax dollars are not going towards a state for war. You're clamping down on them to stop anti-Semitism, but really you're protecting a war that's going to kill more Semites. Think long and hard about that. So here, this little graphic here, this is from APEC Tracker, I do believe. So they did this little infographic here. It says Texas pays $1.4 million. $1.4 million in federal tax dollars for Israel's weapons, but could instead fund 881,000 homes or households with 1 month's free rent, 2.9 million families with 1 month of free groceries. What, can you imagine how many eggs you can buy in Texas? Probably a dozen. 489,000 children receiving free or low-cost health care for a year. Or 37,000 students with loan debt cancellation. And you know what's interesting about all those different things is if Texas invested into their own state instead of this hostage deal to pay for Israel and their ethnic cleansing, that means people within Texas would have a little bit of a lever up to be more prosperable in Texas. But instead, they want to push people down. They want to push people around. They want to push San Marcos because the people of San Marcos say, no, I work my ass off. We know how high inflation is. Cost of living is through the roof. I can't afford basic groceries. Why the hell am I paying for another country to slaughter another country? Why does that make sense? No, I'm not going to agree with that. And the Texas governor is clamping down on that city. Instead of saying, hey, why did you guys, vote for this ceasefire? Maybe asking them that before you just go, oh, it's anti-Semitic. Because that's all they have. That's the only excuse they have to defend this. And as I stated, and this little cartoon points it out, Jewish guy, you're anti-Semitic. Arab guy, you're anti-Semitic. Well, actually, they are both. And here's the definition of this: Semitic, relating to or denoting a family of languages that includes Hebrew, Arabic, and Aramaic, and certain ancient languages such as Phoenician and Attician, constituting the main subgroup of the Afro-Asiatic family, or relating to the peoples who speak Semitic languages, especially Hebrew and Arabic. So that means Israelis and Palestinians are Semitic. And it's amazing that killing Semites in Palestine requires other Semites to call other people anti-Semitic. All because of this brainwashed cult known as the Greater Israeli Project, known as Zionism, has taken people like a virus, like a plague, to believe that the mass slaughtering of people, the mass wipeout of entire population is going to revert the damages done by the Holocaust, and or bring Christ back to earth if you go that route. People have said that Jesus is going to come back if we mass slaughter Palestinians. Which, I'm not that religious, but the times I remember about church, I never heard, Jesus committing a genocide. I thought he's supposed to love one another and be kind of kind towards all men. I thought that was the point. But maybe I'm wrong.